Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Hey guys, welcome back to Siva Social Studies. Okay, so with all those people that were moving out west for gold, the miners are moving for gold, the cowboys and cattle ranchers were moving out there um, to herd their cattle. We needed, number one, a way to get there, which is transportation, and number two, we needed a way to communicate with people who are moving out west, because you have to think about it, sending letters, and remember the Oregon Trail? It take them somewhere around 6 months to take the Oregon Trail. So that's too long to figure out communication problems. So you remember the growth of the West all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It created a need for communication across the country. Samuel Morse created the telegraph, and one of his associates created the Morse code, so you could send these series of electronic dots and dashes to an operator 100 miles away. So we covered that during the industrialization, the first, covering the North. But there needed to be a telegraph line hung that would actually connect the East and the West Coast, because without that, you couldn't communicate with anybody. Another way that people tried to communicate earlier was the Pony Express. And this Pony Express was an earlier attempt of quicker communication in the United States prior to coast-to-coast telegraph. Think of the Pony Express like today's mail system or today's mailman. They would carry and deliver mail across the United States between the years of 1860 and 1861. These Pony Express riders usually took about 10 days to carry messages on a route approximately 2,000 miles long. This horse ride from the east to the west, it was grueling. For this reason, the Pony Express would look for young, single, orphaned men. It was very dangerous. They would die on the trail. They could die from native attacks. They could die from disease, snake bites, and among a whole number other things would kill these riders. They would leave the East Coast on horseback, and they would travel west. They would travel as fast as the horse could gallop for a preset or a predetermined period of time. What they would do is then they would arrive at one of those local post offices, and they would change horses, and then they would continue this trend until they reach their destination. So the time travel for mail leaving like Missouri getting to California, it used to take about, like, the best time it could have taken was 30 days. And the Pony Express got it down to roughly about 10 days. So the Pony Express was definitely popular for the year it lasted. Many Americans sent mail faster than they ever had before, but a new an improved form of mail distribution was just over the horizon. And with the quick building of the Transcontinental Railroad and the telegraph lines that were laid with it, the Pony Express was replaced and quickly shut down. That's why it only lasted that 1 year between 1860 and 1861. And the one thing I want you to remember, again, like I said, I just said it, that everywhere the railroad was laid, everywhere they laid railroad tracks, they laid telegraph lines with it. So this demand that for this coast-to-coast railway, it grew. People wanted to get on a train in New York and be able to get off of it in California. That's what they got. Americans got this east-to-west train built for them. However, rail companies needed lots of money and huge amounts of land to expand this, because it was just too expensive for a rail company to purchase this land and build railroads. So the federal government and the rail companies compromised, and in order for the rail companies to receive the land and cash grants, they agreed to carry things like mail and troops at a lower cost than standard travel. So for this exchange of cheap travel, Congress passed the Pacific Railway Acts of 1862 and 1864. And the purpose of these acts was that the federal government would give the railroad companies these huge loans and expansive land grants for them to build the railroad. And this was the fuel that was needed to, stoke the transportation fire. And in a race to complete this railroad, this Transcontinental Railroad, the Central Pacific started in San Francisco, California, and it's worked its way east, and the Union Pacific started at Omaha, Nebraska, and it worked its way west. And we had a large number of immigrants like the Irish and the Chinese working on these day and night. There were definitely many problems when they were working on the rail lines. Geography like mountains and deserts and a harsh climate. They posed many challenges to building these railroads, not to mention the faulty explosives that would explode too quickly, too early, that would wind up killing many of these men. And on May 10th, 1869, the railroad lines met in Promontory, Utah, and the connection was celebrated by then California Governor Leland Sanford driving a large railroad nail called the Golden Spike into the last rail tie. Celebrations then erupted across the country, celebrating the completion and the connection of the United States through the Transcontinental Railroad. And this spike has since been removed and placed in a museum for safekeeping, when many other companies began to build or continued to build railroads that spread throughout the West. So what was the effect of the railroad on things like people and communication? There's that golden spike. Here is that the railroad. All right, here's where the railroads in the east. Here are your transcontinental railroads. So here's a picture or a painting of the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific meeting. There's a bunch of guys here. One of these guys was holding, I think, a bottle of champagne. One of these guys was holding a glass. I mean, this was the two lines connecting. So it's no surprise that the railroad built America. Economic growth and population in the West increased drastically because of it. The railroads provided better transportation for people, and the goods were able to move there, and people were encouraged to move to the West. There were a lot of positive effects of the completion of this railroad, right? So the United States National Park System was basically created and expanded to many pristine landscapes that were going to be protected for all future generations to see. And with the abundance of Americans traveling west to see this natural beauty, the railroad was a lead factor in the expansion of our population exponentially. The railroads became one of the biggest industries. Now we're getting into economy. The abundant amount of track that was needed to produce and lay resulted in a steelmaking business booming, and many, many men were put to work. Unfortunately, the meteoric rise of the railroads caused great speculation, and people started to panic, and businesses started to collapse. And right here, the Panic of 1873 was hurt because the collapse of railroad owner J. Cook's banking firm. This panic put many small Western railroad companies deeply in debt by the 1800s, and you will see this being very evident during the Gilded Age, and we will actually go over the railroad again when we talk about the Second Industrial Revolution, because of the Bessemer process and the way to make steel quicker, easier, faster, more efficiently, and how fast it would be built, and how many men actually made millions upon millions of dollars off of the building of the Transcontinental Railroad.